Hey everyone, welcome to my new video tutorial. I'm May Park and today I'm going to show you how to create an easy watercolor card using the Watercolor 36 pen set from Altenew. If you're not comfortable with watercoloring, make sure to keep watching this video until the end as I'll be focusing on how to make a watercolor card, especially for beginner and intermediate. I'm also going to share lots of tips and tricks along the way, including a tip on how to choose colors for your project and how to mix paints to get more out of your watercolor pen set. As usual, I'll show you my craft desk after my project is done. So let's get started. This is a set of my floral themed cards that I created using the hand-picked bouquet stamp set last year. I really loved the rose bouquet imagery from the set, so I decided to use the hand-picked bouquet stamp set again for today's project. But this time I'm going to do watercoloring instead of color layering. Today I'll be using Altenew 36 watercolor pen set. This beautiful set of vibrant watercolor hat pens coordinates perfectly with Altenew inks. They are intensely pigmented, fade minimally when drying. I have 2 jars of clean water here. As long as you rinse off your paintbrush separately for warm colors and cool colors, you don't need to change your color until you finish your watercoloring project. Altenew watercolor pen set comes with a fine watercolor brush, but I'm going to use a regular watercolor paintbrush as I find it easy to control pigment and water. My go-to paintbrush size is number 3 as it's easy to add details on small areas while allowing me to cover quite large areas as well. As long as you do watercoloring for your A2 size card project, I think number 3 or number 4 paintbrush should be good enough for painting images. When it comes to watercoloring, it's important to choose a high quality watercolor paper. Today I'm going to use my favorite watercolor paper, which is Artist Cold Press 140 pound. Since it has a textured side, you have more control over water as the water stays longer on the surface compared to hot press watercolor paper. You can use hot press watercolor paper if you prefer smooth surface for your stamping. I'm going to pull out my die from the hand-picked bouquet die set and run it through my Spellbinder's platinum die cut machine. You may wonder why I'm die cutting first before stamping. I'm doing that just because I wanted to use the die cut to position the stamped image to line up correctly. I'm going to place the negative side of my die cut panel and inlay my die cut inside the opening. Then I'm going to pull out my flower stamp from the hand-picked bouquet stamp set and position it on my watercolor paper. I'm making sure the edge of my stamp stays inside the die cut. I'm going to pick up the stamp using the mist tool and ink it up with my favorite black ink, which is Obsidian Pigment ink from Altenew. This waterproof black ink is perfect for stamping images and works beautifully with watercolor. If you want more intense outlines, you can double stamp the image. I was going to color my images inspired by the colors from the Altenew washi tapes, but my image with black outlines doesn't seem to work for my project as I wanted to achieve a soft watercolor card. So I decided to start over and stamp the image with embossing ink and hit emboss it with white embossing powder. Especially if you're in the beginner level of watercoloring, hit embossed image will help your colors stay inside the outline while watercoloring. Or you could stamp the images with a light color water-based ink for no-line watercoloring to create a soft look of watercoloring. Now I'm going to choose paint colors for my watercoloring. If you struggle with choosing the color scheme for your flower projects, you can go with any normal color combo like red, yellow, and green. But I decided to go outside my comfort zone and choose the teal and gray color combination for my project, inspired by the colors from Altenew Teal Shadow Washi Tape. I'm going to start by mixing paints on my watercolor palette with my wet paintbrush to create my own colors. Basically, I'm creating 3 different colors by mixing the following paint colors on my watercolor palette: Fresh Lemon, Rose, Mountain Mist, Lagoon, and Emerald. You can test out the colors on a scrap paper to see an actual colors if you want. Once I pick up some pigment from my watercolor palette, I'm applying light color first for the base layer. You can always add more colors later, so it's important to start from light to dark. I'm watercoloring each petal with less pigment using my damp paintbrush. You can start by wetting your watercolor paper first with clean water and add pigment if you want. By the way, I attached my die cut onto the Altenew watercolor palette using a glue tape temporarily. This will help me rotate my image easily without touching the image while watercoloring. Then I'll be bringing darker colors to the bottom of each petal and where two petals meet together to enhance the shading areas. This time I'm adding more pigment and less water. Next, I'm going to go over the paint to diffuse the color using my wet paintbrush. To create a gradient look of the color, it's important to rinse off your paintbrush with clean water and wipe off the excess paint using a towel in between before you pull out the color. I'm also working on small areas at a time and paint slowly with light pressure on my hand. Usually, you can get a better result when you stay away from adding too many layers on your watercolor images. You can always go over the image to diffuse the color or to add more color. You just need to control the amount of water you add to the paint. Now I'm going to turn on some music and speed up the video so you can watch me color. I was watching Gilmore Girls while watercoloring, and it took me about 1 hour to finish my image. It was so relaxing and fun coloring this beautiful floral image. Now I'm going to create my background. I already prepared my A2 size watercolor panel and I'm moving my die cut image around to see the placement of my image. I'm going to take my wet paintbrush and load a little bit of pigment from my palette. Then I'm adding some big lines vertically on my panel to create a watercolor wash background, leaving some white areas intentionally. This is an easy way to create some movement on your plain watercolor card. Please note that I'm using lots of water to create light shade of colors and adding a few layers with darker colors later. If you tilt your panel down to one side, you can also create an unexpected result by dripping your paints. Next, I'm going to dry my panel using a heat tool to speed up the drying time. Then I'm going to mount my watercolor panel on the A2 size top folding white card base using double-sided tape. You could use a glue tape if you want, but strong adhesive will help your watercolor paper stay flat and sturdy. To add interest on my background, I'm going to splatter the background with some of the paint colors I used on my flowers and leaves. I'm going to pick up some paint from my palette using a small paintbrush, hold it over my background, and tap the body of my paintbrush with my finger. Of course, you can leave the background clean without ink splatters if you want. If you don't want your colors to mix up together, make sure to dry the previous splatters using a heat tool before you add the next splatters using a different color. As you can see, I'm splattering the background with the same paint colors I used on my flowers and leaves. This way, I'll be able to create a seamless look. Once my background is done, I'm going to dry my panel again using a heat tool. Then I'm going to cover my watercolor card with a print paper and place it inside some heavy book to make it flat for about 15 minutes. If you have time, I recommend you leave it under the heavy book overnight. Now I'm going to stamp the sentiment from the Build a Flower Coral Charm using Obsidian pigment ink. It's always challenging to choose the right sentiment that goes with my card design. So I usually pull out several stamp sets and place each sentiment stamp on the card front temporarily to see which one would look better from design perspective. Thinking about the recipient also helps me decide the sentiment. This time, I'm making this card for my crafty friend who is going through tough times in her life. So I chose this specific sentiment. Happiness is coming your way. I'm also going to stamp the sentiment inside my card and another sentiment on the back of my card using the Crafty Life stamp set. This is just a small finishing touch to my handmade card. Crafty Life stamp set is must-have for all you card makers out there, and it's packed with fun phrases and sentiments in a trendy mix of fonts. To finish off my card, I'm going to mount my watercolor die-cut image on the card front using 3M foam tape. You can use 2 or 3 layers of foam tape underneath your die-cut to create a different dimension. I didn't like how my watercolor wash background turned out. It looked too intense compared to my soft watercolor image. So I covered part of my background with some cleared embellishments after I filmed the video. This is it for today. If you watched all the way to the end, thank you so much. I hope this video was inspiring or informative for you guys. I will link all the products and everything that I talked about in the description box below. If you have any questions, just write them below and I'd be happy to answer them for you. If you enjoyed my video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you haven't done it yet, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more card making videos. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye bye!